Hi, I'm Dr. Keshishian, and welcome to our podcast series, PPE, Podcast for Psychoeducation during the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, we're discussing what happens when safer at home is not really safer. Physical, sexual, and emotional abuse have always been an issue, pandemic or not. But along with the stress of COVID, stay-at-home orders have made an already unsafe environment even more dangerous. I'm joined by Dr. Astrid Heger, a professor of clinical pediatrics at USC Keck School of Medicine and the founder and executive director of the Violence Intervention Program, also known as VIP, at the Los Angeles County USC Medical Center. Hi, Dr. Heger. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Great, thank you. Today, we're going to discuss 3 vulnerable populations that may face increased dangers at this time: children, victims of spousal abuse, and the elderly. The potential resources that are available to individuals within these populations, and what you can do if you believe a family member or a loved one is experiencing such abuse. Dr. Heger, could you tell us a little bit more about the VIP clinic and the work you do there?
It's the idea that people in the community, in their homes or on the streets, are vulnerable to all kinds of assault. So starting as a pediatrician, I started a very typical child abuse program within the pediatric pavilion and the population that is seen here at the county hospital. And I am an expert in sexual assault and child sex abuse. And that program just exploded. And it was the only place really in the country that pioneered photo documentation and teaching and all that. And we were the only place in the county open 24 hours a day. Rapidly grew into domestic violence because a lot of women who were raped by individuals in their families or spouses, and the domestic violence became an issue. And so we have I run the geriatric clinic at the county hospital along with the elder abuse program. Then we had a medical home for kids in foster care. We see 70% of the kids going into foster care, and the idea being of screening them for abuse before they're placed in foster care and make sure they're being taken away correctly, and a mental health program integrated into that, thus our relationship, which was essential for kids that are being abused. And so we have a medical home for kids in foster care. And then I realized one of the great things that we should be talking about over this next year in excess is the idea that kids born to mothers who drank end up with incredible mental health issues and behavior issues and failed placements. So we started a fetal alcohol spectrum disorder clinic. And then I realized that kids failing placement were most often LGBTQ kids. We started the Alexis Clinic, our Alexis project, that is focused on gay individuals of all ages, but a lot of them are kids that are in foster care.
Wow, that's very impressive. Thank you so much for the work that you do. So I think you would provide a lot of great insight on the effect that COVID has had to this dynamic. And then specifically what we've been seeing a lot is that the school closures have affected families. How do you think that the school closures due to COVID have impacted children at risk of abuse at home?
Well, I would say that a huge amount of our referrals come from school teachers and crossing guards and people that are in the school somewhere, because the kids come to school impacted by violence at home. So with the schools closed, the reports of child abuse are probably down by half. And we have, in response, we're very worried about these kids because now they're all of a sudden invisible. They don't see anybody. Here they are now, they are home. The parents have to be home. And they're highly annoyed because the kids are very troublesome and demanding a lot of attention. So they've created the absolute perfect storm for kids to get seriously injured. So we've taken on a couple of things. Number one, we have started contacting all the families given to us by DCFS who they consider to be the highest risk, but have not taken the kids away from the parents. So we're assuming that they're the highest risk kids. We can call the families, and how do we help them? We've been doing things like food insecurity and housing insecurity and paying bills and making sure they have electricity and stuff like that. And that's appealing enough that they actually stay connected and we can actually impact through parenting direction and stuff. The lack of schooling is closed one of the biggest portals to protecting kids that we have in this country.
So the schools are your, they're your eyes and ears in a way. And then on
Yeah.
top of that, you've added the stress of everybody being at home and in close quarters. What about other things that are going on with children at home? They're focusing on the internet and they're on their computers and they're schooling through the tablets. What about that?
So one of the things that I think those of us who have had kids or have kids, we understand that they're an intensely, highly demanding, lots of energy, a lot of time goes into those kids. So they are now not in school. There's no teachers helping them. There's no after-school sports. There's no soccer. There's no baseball. None of those programs exist. It's up to the parents. So you have gotten really tired and you want to entertain them. And so you hook them up to a computer. Now, predators preying on kids know that. And so the idea that that's the means to educate and to entertain is got dangers right there.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. Now, we've talked about the kids. What about spouses?
Well, see, we rely on other people to usually to tell us about abuse that occurs at both ends of the spectrum, age spectrum, the very old and the very young. In the middle, we sort of rely on the individual themselves to step up and say, this is not okay. So we have them in lockdown with the person who's beating them up. So what do you tell an abusive spouse when he says you're in quarantine? What do you tell them when you're trying to get out of there and go find a doctor or somebody to report it? Unless you're seriously injured and you're taken to the hospital, that's pretty hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to rely on good friends, that know what's going on in your household. So they get to be the reporters. There's been several efforts in the county and in the city to find housing for women that are living with domestic violence.
So it sounds like there are things that people can do.
It's really the people that surround you, whether it's family, a sister-in-law, your best friends,
Mm-hmm.
who ultimately say, you got to get out of there now. So I think that's the message to all of us is, do we have friends who need that hand, reaching out to them saying, let me help you get out of here? Because you're not going to find your way out of there on your own without some place to go. And that really depends on your family and friends. Absolutely.
Right. I mean, even though we're being asked to be mindful and physically distance, that doesn't mean we don't need our social supports.
That is absolutely correct. And then the fact is that just telling a woman to leave, especially in an environment that's an epidemic, is an impossible thing to ask for.
Right. Where do you go? How you don't stay in a hotel, right? So you need your support more than ever, your family, your friends.
It's true. That's absolutely the truth.
Right. So I mean, we've talked about kids, we've talked about spouses. What about the elderly?
Well, let's face it, where do the elderly actually go that somebody's going to ask them about abuse? They go to their doctor.
Yeah. Yep.
And they go to their doctor more often than any other age group. So they're there and now they're not going.
Right.
So elder abuse reports are down 40%.
Wow.
And so you go and have your blood pressure checked because you're on high blood pressure medication.
Mm-hmm.
And now you don't go. So you're not seeing anybody. There is, that you don't want to go into an extended care facility because everybody's dying there.
Right.
So do you tell the truth or do you lie when asked?
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't know where you're going to end up, where you're going to go, who's going to take care of you, who's going to protect you. So we have this, again, perfect storm for elders in which they are being abused. Nobody neutral can report, and they can't leave because they feel like if they leave, they're going to end up in a death zone of extended care facility. So you're living with that. I think we forget oftentimes that all the things we've talked about are in all different kinds of socioeconomic brackets.
Right.
And that if we're standing in our kitchen sink and we're looking out the window at the house next door and we see violence, it's real. And it's our responsibility to get involved. Really. I mean, people are so afraid of getting involved. It's like none of my business, right? Till somebody's dead.
So, I mean, you're right. The neutral reporting party are usually the care providers, the doctors that they see regularly. And yes, although we're not having in-person visits, there are options for telephone visits, and doctors'
Hmm.
offices are still open. It's just a different type of dynamic. So, making sure to use that avenue to reach out, it's still there, and being mindful of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think if I were a doctor doing a telehealth visit with an 87-year-old, I probably would ask pertinent questions. And if I got a question an answer back that made me uncomfortable,
Yeah,
I think my message would be whatever bogus reason, I would say you need to come to the office.
right. Well, do you have any resources that you think are important for individuals to know about?
The numbers to call for child abuse, for domestic violence, and for elder abuse.
To contact the Department of Children and Family Services, call 1-800-540-4000. To reach Adult Protective Services, call 1-877-477-3646. And for assistance for the survivors of domestic violence, please call 1-800-978-3600 or 211.
Yeah. The idea of wherever you are, there are local agencies that are their responsibility is to respond. You know, the 911 call, if that's what you've got, then use it.
Yeah, it's better than nothing, at
Yep,
least.
absolutely.
No, this is great. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that
Um,
we talked about all the different vulnerable groups that are out there and at risk during the time of COVID, including children, elderly, adults, those facing
mhm,
all kinds of impairments. And the abuse can come in many different forms, physically, emotionally, sexually,
right.
and that there are resources available for those in those situations. But I guess the biggest takeaway point is it's all of our responsibilities. We all need to be mindful of our friends and loved ones, especially if you think that they're experiencing heightened stress and anxiety, to get them the help that they need.
I think that's true. And I think that we can, so many of us have young children or grandchildren in my case. We have the opportunity to begin to teach them to know about racism as per what's going on in the streets, know about violence, know about child abuse to some degree, that they can be also a resource to their friends, et cetera, in the school.
Right, spreading the word.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dr. Hager.
I look forward to talking to you some more.